Hello. Believe I should be live now. Yeah, let's so the way this is gonna work is I'll just put this Twitter space into the chat. So if you want to specifically go on and ask your question vocally, you got to do that on the Twitter space, which I just sent the link to. Alternatively, I will be keeping an eye out for like super chats and stuff of that nature. And if you give a super chat, then obviously I'll read that out and respond to whatever you have to say. But yeah, let's get started. Um, Actually, maybe a better way of doing this. Something like that. Yeah, that works. Oh, there we go. That's
All
what.
right. I've sent Zulu a co-host invite. Um,
There we go.
uh, yeah, sweet, awesome. Zulu, how's it going, brother?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. I'm a little bit tired, but hopefully I'll be able to get over that, and we'll so hopefully have a pretty good stream here. And we already did like
Yeah, for sure.
one of these before, like what we could call, like I suppose, like an episode 0. But that is unfortunately lost to time unless somebody in the audience was recording that because I didn't bother streaming it and it wasn't recorded. But this one
Yeah,
is indeed being streamed.
I don't quite know why I decided not to record that space, but I didn't, and so yeah, as you said, it's it's lost to the void, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah. So look, I mean, first thing I noticed was this morning. Jacob Winograd sent me a DM and a time and place. Well, place, I guess. A time and resolution has been set up for you and Dave to debate. So that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. And that'll be this Thursday. It's like some fucking crazy ass o'clock. It's 1 a.m. for me. Luckily, I'll have the house to myself, so should be fine. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time, I believe it was. But yeah, I'll be making my own.
The lengths you'll go to have a debate with Dave Smith, staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. The thing is, like, I obviously wouldn't do that normally, but if that's what it takes, if he wants to have the debate at 1 in the morning, then fine. That's what it's going to take. I just want this fucking debate to get done. So your sound on stream is slightly louder than the rest of the speakers in the X-Space. Okay, I'll just boost that.
So, can you reveal the resolution, or is it a secret?
Yes. Let me see. I've actually. So the resolution is. Oops, I accidentally leaked some of my notes. Drama. Dave is gonna not watch the video and then watch this stream specifically to get a single flash of my notes. Yeah, the resolution is libertarians ought to bite the bullet and support zero restrictions on public property and insist that it is always wrong to violate the NEP, which it's quite a mouthful, but I think I can win on every point in that resolution. And
I was going to say that is the longest debate resolution I've ever heard in my life. That's incredible. But look, I think I tend to agree. I think it's a pretty good resolution from my perspective as far as how you'll go with it. So I'm totally fine with it.
for sure.
So we do have a few comments and we do have a few speakers on the panel. Someone was telling me that they can't hear me, but it doesn't seem like if anyone else is having that issue, let me know. But for the time being, if you are, thanks very much for joining us, whatever platform you are joining us from. Drop something in the comments if you want to. Purple pill down at the bottom right hand corner. Ask us a question. We'll pop it up in the jumbotron potentially, and we'll use it to provoke a bit of discussion. In the meantime, I was going to see if any of our speakers, I see Fountainhead Forum is on the panel, as well as you can always change your mind. So, Fountainhead Forum, I might start with you. Did you want to say anything to, kind of kick the podcast off, I suppose?
Well, I'm looking forward to any debate you have with Dave. Of course, Dave has a lot of people who ask him for debates, so it's who knows what'll happen. It's I certainly ask a lot of people who have more Twitter followers than I do to come on my show, and I don't want to I don't feel like I'm entitled to their time, but certainly there are some things here that's I would like to see the American Liberty Movement get back to its Randist roots. I mean, there wouldn't be a libertarian party without Ayn Rand, I don't think. But at the same time, the objectivist movement in America is such a train wreck right now, and I don't know how it's ever going to get better. So, and I don't know if you want to go into elaborate on the train wreck, but I can talk about that too if you want me to. So, but yeah, so
Yeah, for sure. I think it.
Really the whole American.
Yeah, but obviously I am an objectivist. So obviously I want everybody's a libertarian to be an objectivist as well. Certainly you need some sort of good, solid philosophy, which most libertarians, let's be real here, don't know a single fucking thing about philosophy. They haven't studied it at all. Obviously there are exceptions, but the broad majority just kind of float up in the politics, and that's about it. But without that, strong philosophical grounding, you do end up, getting these recurring problems which have existed throughout the history of philosophy. Because guess what? Philosophy, who needs it? Turns out everybody needs it. Everybody has a philosophy, whether they know it or not. So the people who kind of, quote unquote, don't have a philosophy, or they haven't studied a philosophy, they just don't have an explicit philosophy. And that's dangerous. So because their implicit philosophy ends up just being some sort of garbled grab bag of various nonsense premises which have already been debated and disputed long ago, and that's why we get so many pragmatists these days. How do I become a speaker? No idea how this works. You have to request to speak, and then Monhop or myself will be able to bring you up. But yes, thank you very much for the question, Fountainhead Forum.
That's true, Zulu. I mean, I am amazed at how. I mean, I get into so many stupid arguments with libertarians, and the amount of logical fallacies I see are just. I want to rip my hair out at them. And yet, it's anyway. Maybe that's all I had time to say. So, thanks.
That's fine. Appreciate you coming up. I did want to say on that, because Zulu mentioned an interesting point, which is that, even if you don't think you have a philosophy, you kind of do, right? That's one of the points of what Zulu was getting at in his video about Dave, and that is one of the almost, I don't want to say it's the point of contention, but I mean, maybe it will be. Maybe when you guys debate, you and Dave debate Zulu, this will be a point of contention. But something he said, I think on Jacob's podcast was like, just because I say, I want to be pragmatic doesn't mean I'm endorsing the philosophy of pragmatism. And it's like, well, maybe not explicitly, but implicitly, your premises imply the philosophy of pragmatism. So, as most people, as you said, don't have a consistent, coherent philosophy. That doesn't mean that the positions that they hold don't imply certain philosophical presuppositions in order for that statement to potentially be true. I want to bring in, if you want to, anyone on the speaker panel, if you want to jump in, just make sure to chuck your hand up, just so I'm not, asking people who, if they want to speak, who don't want to speak, if that makes sense. In the meantime, I wanted to kind of quickly run through what I think the goal of this platform is going to be. So obviously we're at episode 1 now. We had episode, as you said, episode 0, I suppose, that only people that were actually there for it will ever be able to see, because it wasn't recorded. But I've been chatting to Zulu about this in the back channels a little bit, and I think what we really want is for this to be like the town square, I suppose, for consistent principled anarcho-capitalism, and a way for us to kind of be accessible to the audience, for Zulu in particular to be accessible to the audience. I know I've done a fair bit of speaking so far, but my hope is to be able to act as a host that doesn't have to speak a whole lot, that we can keep the conversation kind of flowing, and I can just, facilitate, speakers who want to ask Zulu a question, and Zulu gets an opportunity to, respond. Because I figure, look, the majority of people here, I'm sure, are here to hear what Zulu has to say rather than me. So, look, obviously, I'm going to chime in here and there, and obviously, contribute where I think it's necessary. But I really want this to be like a vibrant discussion, hopefully. So that's my kind of hope for what we're doing here. And obviously, look, I'm a busy person that has, a lot going on in my life. So I'd really like to be able to do this more often than once a fortnight. But I figure it's better to kind of, it's better not to overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather not be, saying, oh, we're going to do this every week and then be canceling, every other space or something, because I think that would, demoralize isn't the right word, but certainly it would discourage people from joining if, or making time to, carving out time in their day to expect to come on only for it to get cancelled. So that's why I figure once a fortnight is a pretty good kind of balance where I'm pretty confident that I and probably Zulu as well will be able to carve out some time, pretty consistently. I will flag that we're probably gonna get episode 2 done, and then I'm probably gonna have to take a quick break over the Christmas period. Because we'll be around family and stuff. Hopefully, you guys will be spending time with your families as well. So that space that would be, I think, expected for like this. If this one's on the next one would be on like the 13th or something, which we might be able to do. But then the next one would be, on the day before New Year's Eve. So I doubt that one will go ahead. But Zulu, did you have any kind of thoughts on what you hope this is kind of going to be as a podcast, as a space, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I suppose the kind of the benefit of doing it like this, where most podcasts, I would say, the audience interaction isn't as much as I at least I might want. Yes, I still enjoy listening to podcasts, of course, but for this one, I think a benefit here, because we're doing it on these Twitter Spaces, formerly known as X, and because it's being live streamed to YouTube and everything, we can have some more of a back and forth, a regular place, like the old like a town square, or like the pub that they used to collect up in for the founding fathers, right? Just a regular place to go to. Everybody knows when it is. Everybody knows where it is, and we can kind of just discuss these ideas out in the open. I think that's going to be quite a positive thing. At the very least, at the very least, now we've got another libertarian podcast, which is, of course, we're waiting for it. And now we have it.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's not enough. The libertarian podcast space just wasn't quite saturated enough yet.
Yeah.
We had to make sure that we got involved because there's just not enough libertarian podcasts going around.
Indeed.
I will. So, Poval, as I said, bottom right hand corner, purple pill. If you want to ask a question, drop it in the comments, and I will hopefully, if you're lucky, pop it up in the jumbotron, and we can ask it or put it to Zulu. So, this question comes from Poval or Povel, and he asks, what do you say about Dave Smith thinking you are paraphrasing too small of an influence to be involved with you? Does this seem right along the lines of Dave's love of democracy? Is this indicative of Dave's pragmatism? Now, I will say, to his credit, he has agreed to debate you. So, like, this criticism was definitely true previously, obviously less true now. But any thoughts, Zulu?
Yeah, so I mean, on the one hand, it's perfectly, I don't expect to get into a debate with fucking Barack Obama
Zulu
next
there?
week. Oh, sorry, do you not hear me?
Maybe not.
Hello?
Is it just
Hello?
me that's not hearing him? Or
Okay, what the fuck? Jesus, the Twitter
Zulu
spaces
there?
are fucked up, man.
Maybe not.
Hold on.
Is it just me that's not hearing him? Or give me a wave, someone on the speaker panel, if...
Hello, can you hear me now? Well, if you can, I can't hear you. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this space and then rejoin it. Fun.
Yeah, this is the one.
Goodness me. Says the invite is invalid. Okay. Hello? Can people hear me? Am I being heard? Goodness me. The pragmatists, they've shut us down. I still cannot hear you. Can other people hear me? Like Jacob, can you hear me, for instance? Cosmo, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Yeah, I know you fucking guys can hear me. Because you're on the live stream. Let me just go for a quick reboot ski. A refresh ski, rather.
Actually, in regards to donut homesteads.
Hello. Can you hear me?
That doesn't imply that you can just encircle someone. Oh, Zula, you're back.
Yes, hello. Not sure exactly what happened there, but yes. So, so Poval is asking, well, what do I think about the fact that Dave is saying that I'm too small of an influence to be involved, for him to involve himself with me, and is that pragmatism? So, there is a valid sense in doing that. Like, obviously, Dave Smith. I'm not saying that he has to debate every random person on the internet who wants to debate him. That's never been my claim. And obviously, if I tried to fucking debate Barack Obama tomorrow, like, it's not happening. I understand that. These people are busy, and they've got opportunity costs involved in debating me. But I think it's false in this instance. Very clearly, I've been able to throw a fucking proverbial grenade into the liberty movement and really start kicking some shit up. Clearly, there is some influence there among the remnant, right? And I think Dave needs to recognize that. Obviously, he has now agreed to debate me. But one thing he should recognize going forth is that, you know, he's so far up in the clouds that he's kind of lost his connection to the remnant. He's lost his connection to the vanguard, and he hasn't realized that his behavior over the past 2 odd years has really alienated him from that core base that he needs to actually, you know, be the leader of a libertarian movement. Obviously, he can continue going on and being successful. He could very easily engage in some sort of a right-wing grift and just, you know, be Piers Morgan too. Obviously, Piers Morgan. A lot of Americans aren't as familiar with Piers Morgan and his various antics over the years because they only started learning about Piers Morgan after his most recent grift, which is like, oh, we care about free speech, and I want to have a free speech show and everything like that. But that's just Piers Morgan for you. He just jumps from grift to grift to grift. He doesn't have any solid philosophical beliefs. He doesn't have any principles. Dave Smith could very easily do the same thing and be very successful and make a lot of money. But at what cost is the question. And I think the cost is revealed by, I think the large majority of the vanguard have now sided with me, and I've managed to gather the remnant, and, you know, maybe that's a price Dave is willing to pay, but I don't think it's worth it.
No, completely agree. Quick one on Piers. Funny story. The reason I found out about who Piers Morgan was a very long time ago was because he once challenged. This is a cricket reference, so a lot of people aren't going to get what I'm going for here. But he once challenged Brett Lee, who was a famous Australian bowler in cricket, and said that he could easily, you know, bat against his bowling. Bearing in mind that for those of you who are baseball fans, Brett Lee used to bowl at roughly the same speed as a fastball in baseball, so about 100 miles an hour. So he was very, very fast. And so there's this clip that's going around. If you look up Piers Morgan Brett Lee on YouTube, you'll find it, and it's very funny. It's basically Brett Lee steaming in and like throwing balls at Piers Morgan at like 100 miles an hour, and Piers being absolutely terrified and running away from it. So if you hate Piers Morgan, it's a very very funny clip to watch. I will go to the hands real quick. I see Jacob wants to jump in. Jacob, thanks for coming on. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Um, so, yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on two things quick. One, on the last question that Zulu answered regarding Dave and the not engaging with Zulu. And, I think, there's something to what Zulu just said that I would agree with. I would agree with it in part. And this was what I was trying to communicate, I think, in both directions to both Dave and Zulu when I did uh, my conversation with Dave, as well as my reaction to the anatomy of a celebritarian, which was like to Dave, I was like, I think Dave, you kind of got to keep in mind that you're maybe in two different worlds now, but you've kind of drifted more into this other world where you're doing this like national circuit and you're on these big stages. And like, you know, 10 years ago, Liquid Zulu's video would have been big to him in terms of just like, it's big to me, it's big to us who are primarily just in the libertarian circuit, right? But I can understand from Dave's point of view that initially he's just judging it based on what he's usually doing. And so he's like, well, that's not that big. And I'm like, okay, Dave, maybe it's not that big compared to like you being on Candace Owens or on Tucker or having Fuentes on. But like to us in the Liberty movement, because we're still a small movement, uh, it's it's not a nothing burger. Like Zulu's not Archie Flowers in terms of his intelligence or relevance in the movement. So, and just in general, that like even if it's not Zulu, I was like I agree with the sentiment that like, and Dave agreed too that like if you want to represent libertarians well, then like you need to do things like when he comes down to the Soho Forum and mingles with libertarians and goes on
Right, right.
smaller shows criticisms and whatnot. I think that's what I would, at least that's judging based upon what I would do if I was in a similar position. I'd feel like that would be the right thing to do, and I think Dave uh, has more or less conceded that, and that's partly why I think he's uh, agreed to do the debate. Um, so on the other point about the which I don't want to go too far off topic, but you brought up the whole donut homesteading thing, which obviously Zulu and I did like a sort of mini debate slash just conversation about that last this week or last week. I don't know, Thanksgiving has screwed up my schedule now, but there's something there where like I kind of see both arguments. I see like Kinsella's point and Dave's point, and I see like Zulu's point, and I guess I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the Zulu camp's view on this. And I guess this came from the Blockian proviso and all that. So, but I guess like to maybe Steelman, maybe just to get your thoughts on it. Do you at least, even if you disagree with the objections to the uh, the forestalling argument, do you understand the concern from the other side? Is that like which is partly my concern and why I'm still trying to think out the dilemma, is that we should all, as good anarcho-capitalists, uh, be very wary about anything that creates a positive obligation or a positive right, and that was what I was trying to find the limit of when I was talking to Zulu about this on my stream. It was like I was like, because at some point it just started to sound like, oh well, if I construct my property in a certain way and it create some kind of inconvenience or some kind of burden to other people, am I now obligated to do something different towards them because of it? And it just, there's something there that I feel like it has to be perhaps fleshed out more or articulated well to avoid that slippery slope to, because what I was going to was that like, well, if at any point, uh, it's just about I can't forestall. Like, why is that just land? And why is that not, for example, the minerals under my house? right? Like my house is making it harder. You know, if I own all this property and there's like a bunch of gold under my house, am I in some sense forestalling the rest of the world from easily locating the gold under my house? So that's the dilemma. I understand the dilemma in the other direction about, because I think we all agree forestalling in the general sense is bad. Like if we you know, keep domestic civilians or immigrants from going to land that's not settled upon or homesteaded and saying you can't homestead that. That's an obvious example of what we would agree is forestalling, and we don't want that. But then to call the donut homestead scenario forestalling, I think does create some dilemmas that need to be talked out.
Yeah, for sure. It is obviously it's not a very simple or obvious problem. It's not even obvious why it would be a problem in the first place. So I do understand sort of that. My main point with the why I brought this up in reference to this is because Dave's point in that response stream wasn't that he's unconvinced by, you know, for instance, Łukasz Dominiak's argument for the proviso. It's not that. It's that he sort of had this idea that there just wasn't this debate. This debate just didn't exist. That it's like, oh, well, you just got to... That he thought that the proviso, that the strongest form of it, was literally just, oh, well, we've got this problem here, so we're going to have to make an exception in the NEP just this once. And that's how he views the issue, because he didn't actually go through and look on libertarianpapers.org or anything like that and see that, no, there is actually this theoretical argument for why there should be the proviso. That was the main point that I was sort of trying to get at there. Is that obviously someone like Kinsella, he disagrees with the proviso, but Kinsella is fully aware that there is a debate here, that there is actual theoretical arguments for the proviso, whereas Dave seemingly was completely unaware of this until perhaps maybe now he's aware of it. And I do actually,
Yeah,
just
for sure.
before we continue, I do have a...
Oh, yeah, go.
I just realized I had a super chat I need to respond to, and that would be DTD Bald Bandit 3028 for $5. Thank you very much. I'm on your side, but I have to give Dave credit where it's due. Like others, he introduced me to ANCAPism, which enabled me to engage to this point. Sure, so I would never have made the video in the first place if Dave was just honest about what he's trying to do. If he was just honest and said, "Hey, look, guys, you know, I'm kind of liberty adjacent, and I'm getting to go on all these massive shows and try and push the right to be more anti-Fed, more anti-war, yada yada yada." It's like, great, fine, do that. Like, you know, you don't see me making 3-hour videos about Thomas Massey and how Thomas Massey isn't an ANCAP, because Thomas Massey doesn't claim to be an ANCAP. He doesn't claim to be the most consistent motherfucker you know. It's precisely because of Dave's more recent pragmatism without dropping the libertarian label. He's still seen as Mr. Libertarian on all these massive shows, and that is, I think, in my view, very, very damaging towards the movement. That's the main problem I have with how Dave is conducting himself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, what you'll notice about a lot of the people that bring up how Dave brought them into the movement is he brought them in when he was arguably, at least on the surface, far more principled. Like he was just talking about the principles, or at least arguing from the principles. He hadn't reached the point where it was like, oh shit, like I need to kind of discard the principles because of this particular issue. And the other thing I say, it's just an opportunity to discuss this accusation or this claim that's been leveled by other people, which seems to be along the lines of, because Dave at one point, even up till recently, was really, really good on ethics, then that means he deserves like a, you know, infinite level of just like appreciation, and like, you know, we need to just kind of respect what he already did for the liberty movement. And it's like, well, if you take the reductio case, if you assume Zulu is correct that Dave has abandoned principles, if you take the reductio case of that and he had gone from being a libertarian to a communist or something, then it's like, okay, so would we be willing to criticize him then? Okay, just because he was good on libertarian ethics from 2015 through to 2023, and then halfway through he did a reverse Mike Rectenwald and turned into a communist. No, obviously not. We would definitely criticize him, especially if he was still trying to claim to somehow be a libertarian while also advocating for the total collectivization of property or something. Yeah, we would definitely criticize him then. So I think, yeah, look, and this is almost why I would say the fact that Dave was so good for such a long time and has contributed a lot to the libertarian movement, I don't think there's any doubt about that, is why we spent so much time being willing to engage with him on a good faith, like, discussion level of analysis where we weren't going to just go hard at him. Like, it was even well after, I would say, when he made some of the comments that we've kind of really despised, that we were like, okay, we can't do this anymore. I was perfectly willing to be like, hey, look, I get he said some mean things about us, but he's still been a really big contributor to the liberty movement. So we'll give him some grace and let's have him on, where we maybe wouldn't have given that grace to some random who would come at us with the same critiques. Before I go to, oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, of course.
So G Slime says that he has something he wants to say on this point. So perhaps him first, but obviously, you're the host. You can pick the hands as you see fit.
Yeah, of course. I'll bring in G, and then I want to read out a couple of the questions in the jumbo, and then we can go around to the rest of the hands. So, G, come through, man.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so on this point, right, that like Dave Smith, right, is someone who brings like people into libertarianism, right? I think it just assumes that we're all just drifting around until we just hear like liberty ideas, right? But I don't think that's really the case for, anybody that's a serious libertarian, right? Like, for me, I would say I was an ANCAP years before I found anybody online talking about ANCAP. And I searched online specifically for intellectual property is evil. That's what I searched for. And I found like Zulu's videos and that got me into it. But I don't think if you're not actively searching for liberty oriented, philosophy, you're not gonna like accept it or even take it seriously, right?
I do think there is. I'm fully willing to accept that is the case for perhaps a lot of the more radical people, but I do still think there is like a place for proselytizing at the very least to give these people who have like perhaps an implicitly good philosophy like a really solid understanding of that philosophy. Like for instance, like I tell a story all the time of when I implicitly I obviously agreed with the metaphysics of objectivism, but it wasn't until I read Opar and I was reading the first chapter of that and it's going over like the metaphysics and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I've always believed. Yes, this is so obvious. This is what I believe. And he just says it in such like a clear way that I think it really does help to like refine that thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but like you have to have the radical message for that, right? I'm saying like someone like Dave, right? If he's not being consistent, right? The only people who's gonna be attracting to the liberty movement is like way station libertarians.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, G. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, so look, obviously we'll come to the hands very shortly. I do want to read a couple of questions that were asked in the comments. So the first one from Legionnaire, and he's asking Zulu, do you think libertarianism is compatible with Kantianism? Not necessarily asking if Kantianism itself is valid or true.
So I would say yes, depending on the special flavor of Kantianism you have. Like, if you have the NAP as one of the categories or whatever they're called, then yeah, you would get libertarianism. I accept thin libertarianism, as it's sometimes called, where all it is talking about the legal theory. Now, you could have any number of prior philosophy before that legal theory, and which you are trying to use to justify the legal theory. I obviously consider Kantianism completely false, but it's not per se incompatible with libertarianism. I don't know how you get to libertarianism from Kantianism. But I mean, Kantianism is already a very kooky, wacky philosophy, So I suppose they do some kooky wacky things. I don't know. I can't really speak on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, look, there's certainly some philosophies that I would say are probably incompatible, but it's like, look, I mean, I guess if you can get from Marxism to the NAP, then you can be a Marxist libertarian, but I don't think maybe that's not even possible in
Mhm.
theory. But yeah, I tend to agree. I think whatever way you can find to get to the NAP, if you do get to the NAP, you're a libertarian. And look, obviously, we're still going to criticize the flawed epistemology that got you there, but you're still a libertarian if you subscribe to the philosophy. So I do want to get to one more of these questions, and then we'll go back to the hands. So Mandelbrot asks, how do objectivists solve the is-ought problem with regards to ethics? Do you think this ethical system commits the naturalistic fallacy? I don't know if he's referring to objectivism committing the naturalistic fallacy or people who subscribe to the is-ought problem, but how would you kind of pass that one, Zulu?
Sure. So I think there are a lot of ways to attack the guillotine. My go-to is normally companions and guilt, which isn't an objectivist argument, to be clear. It's just a correct
Did we
argument.
just lose Zulu again?
Oh, for fuck's sake! Can you
I
not?
think I lost you for a sec. I don't know if others did, but
Okay. Yeah. So I'll
you're
say
back now. So continue.
cool. So I'll say for companions and guilt, that's normally my go-to. Which isn't a specifically objectivist point. It's I've heard it made by Jeffrey Kaplan, who's a philosophy guy on YouTube. He has a very good presentation of it, where it's basically recognizing that, well, in fact, Hume is giving us an epistemic norm, right? There's such a thing as an epistemic norm. And actually, I heard this argument from a Kantian, actually. So, epistemic norm, and this epistemic norm is supposed to be saying what sorts of things you should believe in, right? But then it's saying you shouldn't believe in anything which has a should in it. It's like, okay, so this is an ought statement, which claims that ought statements have no truth value. So it's like, okay, well, it defeats itself. And I think I consider that a valid argument, which obviously doesn't give you any sort of a positive case. Now, the way an objectivist would normally approach that is by just giving the positive case for the objectivist ethics, namely that a value is a particular type of thing, right? Before you can have ethics, you have to answer, well, what is a value, and who is it for, right? A value is something that you act to gain and or keep. Now, who is the proper recipient of these values? Well, if this is the whole thing with you need some sort of a standard for value. If you're standardless, then it's just he's randomly just grabbing things, and we can't analyze that ethically at all. And Rand posits, and I agree with her, that you have to have life as the standard of value, because it's only for living things that there's even such a thing as value, right? If you're not alive, a rock doesn't value anything, right? A rock doesn't act to gain or keep anything. And so life, I agree with Rand that life is the standard, and then from that you can build out the entire objectivist ethics. I'm not super sharp on the objectivist ethics, I'll admit. I focus mostly on the legal theory, but there are many good books discussing this in depth. Virtuous selfishness would be the main one, I would say.
For sure. I'm gonna go to Nye now. Nye, thanks for waiting. Yeah, please jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I wanted to comment on the forestalling question that was raised. Dave Smith and Kinsella does this a little bit too, talk about it like it's something that's tacked on to property rights. Like Kinsella named it after the Lockean proviso, meaning you can homestead things except for A, B, and C. We have these random exceptions. But that's more of a quirk of how the theory originated with Walter Block. He was working on theory of guardianship, and he came up with forestalling out of the blue as a way of resolving some cognitive dissonance he had about the rights of guardianship. But this isn't at all unusual on the cutting edge of developing theories. You have things that come up in a special case, like you can think of, we had special relativity before we had general relativity. So anyone who's confused about this, it's just a matter of how the theory develops, and we have to do more work on this because, like, if you've heard Zulu talking about Dominiak, he makes this argument and it's pointing towards the fact that forestalling is much more of a fundamental concept in property rights than our vocabulary, which originated with Bloch's theory, would suggest it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this is why I very much like Dominiak's paper on this, because he makes it very clear. It's like, okay, well, here is what we understand liberty to mean. Here's what we understand a duty to mean in libertarian terms. Okay, so if we assume the opposite, right? This is just standard proof by contradiction. If we assume that you are indeed allowed to make these donut homesteads, well, then we end up with contradictory duties, because you both don't have the duty to not enter the middle, because nobody owns the middle, okay? But you do have the duty to not enter the donut. Okay, but then, how about this? Entering the middle implies that you enter the donut. So, therefore, you do have a duty to not enter the middle. So you both do and do not have this duty. Which is just straight up contradiction. So that definitely, like, that shows, like, okay, well, this is actually fundamental. And the fundamental fact of property that it actually ties down to, I believe, is Deus's let exclusion stand principle. So when you homestead the donut, you're excluding people from the donut hole. You're just already physically, actually, by praxeology, engaged in control of that thing, right? It's a very strange way of thinking about control. It's not like the standard way of you just grab someone, right? But you are still controlling that middle. So that's the way you need to think about this, is that it ties in with the fundamental fact of property, which is that property is the right to exclude people from something, right? There are other ways you can describe the exact same principle, by the way. You can also say it's the right to control thing. And that's the fact that it's pointing to. So if you were to do this around someone's house, well, then you're controlling their house. You've basically just put like a Springfield dome over top of them. It's like, well, you're clearly engaged in trying to control something which you don't own. And that's just a broader form of the principle of theft. Theft is just one instance of this broader principle, that it's criminal to try and control something that you don't own, to direct the use of things that you don't own. That applies both to things which are already owned by someone else and things which aren't owned by anybody. And by the way, just real quick, Kixu Kalat gifted a membership, so thank you very much.
One other thing. The other thing I heard people get confused about is in the paper, he's doing this like flat world drawing, this 2D world, where you have concentric circles. And then people ask, oh, what if you fly over, or what if you dig underground? The simplest way to think about it is just imagine these are spheres. So there's no physical way to actually enter space. The circles is just to represent it easier on pen and paper.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure.
I think that is a crucial point that people miss about that, is they'll just assume that it's like, yeah, as you said, a circle, when really you can't really demonstrate that principle using three-dimensional objects properly on a piece of paper, as you said. Quick thing on the whole forestalling thing. I'd like to know from like Kinsella's perspective how it is if you reject forestalling, if you say that it's not an issue, you can do it. How you would go about saying that, you know, if Zulu was walking down the street and I dropped a trap over him, I never touched him. It was a big enough trap that it could fit him entirely without it actually touching him. And I said, okay, you're now in my trap now, and I don't want to let you leave. And Zulu was like, hey, what the fuck? You've like basically kidnapped me here. I can't do anything. I was like, well, I'm not touching you. I haven't actually physically interfered with your body. I've just put a trap around you, entirely encasing you so that you cannot leave. But I haven't actually touched you, so there's no aggression being implied. That, I think, is what the anti-forestalling position would have to say is true. Or they'd have to say, yeah, look, you're allowed to just encase this person in a trap and not let them leave. And as long as you didn't actually physically move them into that trap, then you haven't actually done anything wrong. Do you agree with what I'm saying here, Zulu? Is that like a fair assessment of what the anti-forestalling case would imply?
Yeah, and it gets strange, because then you can start shrinking this trap down and down and down further, and it's like, okay, well then they do sort of face like a continuing problem. Okay, what is the actual principal difference between the trap not touching you and it touching you, right? If you imagine like I just had like handcuffs over you and they're slightly bigger than your wrists and they just float there. And then they keep constricting down, down, down until eventually they're touching you, which is like, okay, well, then we've got a problem of how precisely do you define touch. And then it's like, okay, well, what is the principal difference between the handcuffs actually touching your wrist versus floating 1 millimeter away from your wrist? Because for you to have an actual continuum problem, there has to be a principal difference at both ends. That's why, because there is a principal difference between me firing a 5 gigawatt laser at your house and blowing it up versus me, a stray photon coming off my torch and hitting your front door. There's a principal difference there, namely one of them initiates a conflict over the use of the house and the other doesn't. And then how do you solve these continuum problems? Well, that's a matter for the courts, right? The jurist sitting in his armchair can't answer the exact point, the exact number of photons where it becomes aggression. But I don't see what the principal difference is for there to even be a continuum problem in the first place. Apparently, G wants to quickly add on to what Nye said as well.
I'm making kind of a. Sorry, you wanted to.
So G's just in chat. He just said he wants to add something to what Nye was saying.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, okay. Real quick. Yeah, I realize I'm kind of making just like a consequentialist point here, which is like, oh, well, if forestalling is false, it would be a bad idea. But I just think it is worth considering. Like, okay, hang on. Like, if the implication of the non-aggression principle is actually that you can just entrap people, and as long as like you don't start off by physically touching them, like I think that is worth considering. I'm not even sure necessarily. Maybe you could just talk about it being a threat to their life as being why it's criminal. But like, if I was to point a gun at someone and say, okay, you here, go do this, otherwise I'm going to shoot you. It's like, well, I haven't actually, again, physically aggressed against them yet. I'm just making, I'm what I would say is that is me acting as if I own their body by commanding them to do something. And if I don't, then I'm going to, shoot them. So, but if you don't have the forestalling principle, then I would, it's possible, maybe you disagree, Zula, it's possible that you can't even necessarily explain why that is wrong. Why it's wrong for me to just point a gun at someone and say, hey, I'm going to shoot you unless you do this. If they do it, then it's like, well, I never actually physically interfered with them, so there's no issue.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I haven't heard it formulated that way before, that threats are basically a form of forestalling. But it definitely sounds true on the face, at least.
For sure. I do want to. I'll let G come in quickly, in shortly, but I do want to go to. You can always change your mind because he has been here since the start. So, you can always change your mind. Please jump in, brother.
Oh, hey, yeah. I have an interesting theory, but I'm not sure it's true. I think all types of aggression are types of forestalling, kind of. So, like, ownership is the right to direct, and I think just forestalling is just somehow like constraining your right to direct, basically. So, like in the case of stealing, he's basically forestalling the thing you stole from you, basically. I haven't thought about it maybe enough, but what's your idea about that?
Yeah, it's definitely like a worthwhile thing to investigate. Just how broad is the principle of forestalling? Because it's very obviously, like the first level would be, okay, well, this is actually just a more general form of theft. And it's like, okay, well, what if it's really just all aggression is a type of forestalling? And I think that's definitely worthwhile to, think about and look into.
Yeah, I've had similar thoughts before.
Yeah, G, go ahead, man. And then I want to get through a few of these questions again in the Jumbotron, and then we'll go back to the hands.
Yeah. So back to what Nye said, right? There's this common argument that that what if I just fly over and like land in the middle or something, or what if there's an alien, right? He comes down and lands in the middle. I think it's important to understand. I mean, Zulu made this point, right, in one of the streams. He said this is not a special case or anything, right? For exclusion, right? It's exclusion is what did Zulu say? um,
It's like the basis of property. Like that's what it means to have a property right is the right to exclude. Is that what you're getting at?
I mean, what you said specifically in this question of like, well, what if I, in some means to get around
By the way, you're lagging out quite a lot.
excluding, yeah, I'm lagging out.
Yeah, you seem to
Hello?
be back now.
Oh yeah, my connection is
Okay.
reconnecting. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you were saying that it's like it's not a special case or anything. Like all exclusion, right, is like you can get around it, right? That's the point. You know what I mean? It's still aggression to bypass my attempt to so I mean, on that point, it's important to understand what exclusion means, right? Because I mean, as a property owner, the onus is really the onus is completely on you, right? To make it known by particular particular like they can know about it. Right? It's on you to make it available to be by them specifically. Exclusion means is establishing a way to know about that exclusion, right? But
Yeah, because for there to be, because obviously the initial goal was, okay, well, we're trying to avoid conflicts here. We got the non-aggression principle. So then if you don't have any objective borders, there's been like at various points people have been like, oh, well, how could you homestead like a nature preserve? It's like maybe you could just throw out worms and then the worms will homestead for you and it'll be completely untouched. I don't think that's valid because somebody could come along later and have literally no way of telling that you've even homesteaded this thing. So for you to actually complete homesteading of a thing, you have to erect some sort of objective border that anybody can come along and see. They're like, okay, this thing is clearly owned by someone. Because if you don't do that, then conflicts can't be avoided, which, by the way, that's the exact reason why verbal decrees can't establish property. Like if I just say, hear ye, I own that mountain over there, and then just walk off, it's impossible for me to actually own that mountain, because then we can't avoid conflicts over it.
right, exactly.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I had another point, but I forgot what it was.
All right, cool. Well, we'll keep it moving then. So I do want to get to a couple, as I said, a couple of these questions that are up the top here. First of all, from
Real quick, I do have
a
super chat. I'll just slot that in here. From Null Paradigm for $5 Canadian. Thank you very much. How does the homesteading of airspace work? Say I am an astronomer, and now an airport comes later and obstructs my view. Is this forestalling me? So, again, you'd have to erect some sort of objective border there. Like, the airport has no clue that you were sitting there with a telescope previously and looking up in the sky with it, right? I believe I will be discussing some of these things on a Fabian Liberty stream tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what, but it'll be stuff like, edge cases of homesteading. For things like, if there's a nice tranquil, like, monastery in a place, and then somebody moves in and starts playing real loud music, it's like, okay, well, the monastery is actually homesteaded a certain level of peacefulness, a certain low level of noise. Whereas, if a monastery tried to move in next to a nightclub, they couldn't complain about the noise, because the nightclub has already clearly homesteaded that level of noisiness. It obviously does get, there are going to be tricky situations, but that's like the general principle there.
Mm-hmm. Can I add something to this?
Yeah,
Sure.
real quick.
Yeah, I've talked about a lot of these cases in Zulu server where like I think you can add you can bring in economics here and say, right, there would most likely be services specifically like for making people known, right? Like making people aware that you own something, right? Or like because the whole society or just anybody in the free market, right? they're bound by like contracts, right, to do anything. So you would have to be a part of this whole network of contracts, and that would just be a part of it, right? These services, like for these what seem like edge cases, right? You could have like for airspace and like fishing, like rights and stuff.
For sure. Yeah, so let me get to a few of these questions up the top here. So we'll start off with Register of Decay, who says, Zulu, what do you think of, this is a pretty forthright question, but what do you think of Dave Smith trying to subvert the libertarian movement with the post-liberal movement, including his cozying up with Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes?
Well, I mean, again, I think this is just goes part and parcel with the pragmatism, and in fact, you see there's this now a push from the very failed Mises Caucus to rebrand the Libertarian Party into the America First Party, which is like, okay, well, great, you've just formed the Groyper Party now. It's like, this is not going to get you any, like, this coalition is not going to net anything for libertarianism. You know how you net things for libertarianism is you need a strong vanguard of libertarians who are organized, politically organized, and willing to, fight for the philosophy really strongly, and exactly what the Bolsheviks did. And guess what? How do you do that? Well, you need some sort of a political party, probably, if you're in a democracy. Otherwise, and people kind of like criticize the libertarian parties across the world because they're like, okay, well, are we a book club or are we a party? And this is normally levied in accusation against people who want the Libertarian Party to remain radical and not chase voters. It's like, okay, well, either we're trying to get voters or we're just a book club. It's like, you know what, maybe a book club is exactly what it needs to be. It needs to be a club, right? Guess what? The Founding Fathers, they weren't trying to get votes in Parliament to have King George change his mind. They formed this club, right? And they were being highly radical and producing radical messaging every single day, right? And a great way to do that in a modern democracy, a tool to organize around. Well, what is it? It's a political party. That's how you do that in a democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to pick up on this real quick because I had a back and forth with MRH Legacy actually, who has weirdly like kind of dropped off the face of the earth, but he pops up once in a while to kind of talk about stuff. But so I'm not gonna lie, I had a crack at that Liam McCullum guy, who is kind of in Dave's kind of circle, I suppose, because he was advocating for turning the Libertarian Party into like the America First, I guess, party, and he was like, it needs to be like Dave Smith and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Thomas Massey and all these characters. That's the party that it needs to be. And I basically said, okay, this is just straight up, we're just abandoning libertarian principles here, and we're just saying, yeah, it's better if we just, fall in line behind the most, popular advocates of like something approximating America First in 2025. And he basically responded to me and he was like, so do you think it's per se bad to dissolve the Libertarian Party? And I don't know whether it's the case or not. I think it's good to have a political party that you can use to spread the message, as Zulu kind of just said. But I don't think it's like an abandonment of principle per se. If we were like, yeah, we're just not going to have the Libertarian Party anymore, we're going to do other things. I think it might be a mistake, but it's not, you're not aggressing against anyone by not having a political party. But what I would say is it's kind of a package deal going on here where it's like, we're not just talking about the abandonment of the Libertarian Party. We're talking about, you still clearly think that political parties are valuable. You just don't want it to be a Libertarian Party. So at that point, like, if your argument is, well, we don't need a party in order to endorse, in order to put libertarian ethics forward, well, then why are you advocating for a non-libertarian party at that point? Then just don't advocate for any political party. So to me, I think it was I like MRH. He's a good guy, and he's obviously made some great videos in the past. He hasn't made a video in ages, but when he was making content, it was really good. But like, I just think that's disingenuous almost, like to say, oh, like, so what, you're saying that you have to endorse political parties in order to be a libertarian? It's like, well, no, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is if you are going to endorse political parties, you shouldn't endorse abandoning the Libertarian Party in favor of the America First Party and bringing in a whole bunch of non-libertarians into the philosophy or into whatever party you're trying to endorse. So that's where I thought it was kind of package dealing that was going on there. I do want to read one more of these. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Zulu.
Yeah, I just want a quick shout out to Face Value OG for $10 US. Thank you very much. Who says Declaration of Independence is better than the Constitution? So yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. I think it was, if they'd just left it at the Declaration of Independence, then America would have been in an even better place than it is, relatively speaking. I do want to get to one more of these questions up the top here, and then I promise we will get to the hands. An archivist, Nick, asks, do we need to try and excise Kantianism from the foundations of anarcho-capitalism? For instance, do you think we need to make objectivist praxeology? So I think this is kind of, first of all, I can see Christian downvoting this heavily or disliking this heavily. But I mean, obviously, you were asked earlier whether, whether you can be a libertarian Kantian, and you said you could. So I'll be interested to see whether you also agree, though, that we need to get rid of Kantianism from the libertarian movement.
I certainly don't think that's an urgently required thing or anything. Obviously, I disagree with Kantians, and I'm gonna argue against Kantians whenever the issue comes up. But I don't think it's necessarily an idea to excise them at the moment. I think the philosophy it's when is the good, influential Kantian of the modern age who's able to get best-selling novels anything happening. I think I'll let the Kantians be. They can do their thing as much as they want, so long as they're holding to the NEP. Whatever, there can be a coalition there, right? This is the thing with how you get to coalitions. How do you build a coalition? Well, you have to both agree on the fundamental principle there. And at the very least, the Kantian libertarians, they do agree on the principle of the non-aggression principle. Right? And so there can be a coalition there, and I think it's fine to have coalitions. There are also Christian libertarians who agree with the non-aggression principle, like Prax Ben. I go and stream with Prax Ben sometimes. It's always a great time. Because there's a coalition, right? And what is that coalition called? It's called libertarianism. And I think as far as libertarianism is concerned, you shouldn't be excising people who are in fact libertarians. The reason why I, advocated so strongly against Dave Smith is because he was actually attacking the non-aggression principle. He was attacking the root of the liberty movement, and that's why he had to go. Whereas I don't really see the Kantians, the libertarian Kantians, attacking the non-aggression principle. I think they're wrong in many ways, but they aren't at the very least. What you can say is that they're not attacking the non-aggression principle. They're damn deontologists, for crying out loud. They really, if they believe in the non-aggression principle, they really fucking believe in it, right? So I think the coalition can be maintained there without problems.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And as you've said, like, we've had a lot of great discussions with Christians and Kantians that are libertarians. I think, as you say, the core is that philosophy, and we can coalition from there. I want to go to a couple of hands now, so we'll go to Jacob first, and then I'll bring in Finn. So Jacob, go ahead.
Well, now like 50 things have been said since I raised my hand, so I've forgotten like 49 of the things I was going to say, which is fine. I think in general, the sentiment I want to get across, and I kind of brought this up on my stream with Dave, and I think it kind of went. I might have brought it up with you. I can't remember. Is I think there's this tension here that needs to be recognized, and that on one hand, I think it's good to, if you have something in the theory that seems to be like, well, this is a tension, this is a problem. Ooh, some people are saying that there's not a good answer here, or that we have to contradict the theory here. I don't think that the right approach is to just kind of be like, oh well, there's just a contradiction, and we'll just have to accept it. Now, like to Dave's point, when he said that, he was like, well, maybe libertarianism has this like one or two exceptions, but like every other philosophy in the world has like, 50 or 100 contradictions. So, you just go with the one that has the least amount of contradictions. So, but I think on one hand, yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think actually we should sort of normalize and, sort of celebrate those who, sort of see a contradiction, see a problem, and are dissatisfied with that and go, well, let's look into this. Let's talk this out. Let's do work into trying to figure out, is there an actual contradiction here? Or, let's go back and check our premises. Let's go and brainstorm. Are there solutions that we haven't thought of? I think on the other hand, though, uh, something I do want to stress in the other direction is that uh, I don't think, and I think we would all agree that we don't need to be preaching that libertarianism is a utopian philosophy for it to be true. And this is sort of like what I call the nirvana fallacy or perfect solution fallacy. And um, if we sort of sell libertarianism as, now I think it's one thing to sell it as conflict avoidance and that it decreases conflict, but it's also not, it'd be untrue to say that like, well, it's just going to always perfectly prevent or solve every conflict and that there won't be any other problems, and that there aren't some problems where the libertarian answer might be, well, this is where, and perhaps this is my Christian bias, but I think even if you're not a Christian, you would probably agree that uh, some problems that can happen in any society, even a libertarian one, have to be solved with a culture that values liberty and that will push society in that direction, right? Like, even for you secular objectivists here, you would agree that if you had two societies that had a libertarian legal order and how they were constructed, and one was an objectivist culture of sorts, and then the other one was, I don't know, to pick, I'm trying to not pick something that's a reductio, but like let's say it was uh I don't know, a Muslim one or something. And listen, I've met Muslim libertarians, they exist. But I think we would generally agree that like that not all cultures, not all belief systems uh, are created equal, and that part of the way in which we uphold liberty is through culture, is through ostracism, is through social pressures and things like that. And insofar as I think that like what people like Kinsella, people like Dave, and I guess to myself to some extent are saying is that, even if we're not convinced by this forestalling argument, which I think is interesting, I think it needs to be looked into more and hashed out more. I still have some qualms with it in terms of the rough edges I see. Uh, but it's not like we're saying, oh, well, now we just give up. It's like, well, I think the point we would make, and I think everyone here would agree with, is that part of what prevents conflict in the first place is people who have a general culture that looks down on those things. And I think in general people would uh because forget just like a donut homestead with one person, like, it gets infinitely complicated when it's like, what if it's 10 people who own a property around one person, right? And so they're just all, I think we can almost endlessly think of examples where not only does it get murky perhaps on the theory, but even then to the judge, you know, the facts on the ground could sometimes be dubious, and not every problem and conflict is necessarily going to be solved through law alone, and culture does sometimes, I think, have to play an important role in doing that. And that doesn't mean libertarianism is false.
Well, for sure, if people have
Yeah, see the questions about it.
if people have like a homogenous culture, then yeah, they might not get into conflicts in the first place. But I think sort of the main point with libertarianism is that, well, these are actually the rules you have to follow in order to avoid conflicts. This is what it means to avoid conflicts. And that is the realm of law, is that there are these things called conflicts. So how should you deal with them? And to be clear, there is actually an answer to, well, what if it was 10 people who tried to seal in the donut? The answer is it's the last person he's committing forestalling because he's the guy who finally seals up that donut. There's also like an analogy where it's like, 100 like footballers and you're trying to get to the end zone. I do believe Dominiak discusses this in his paper. I can't remember if I was convinced by his argument on it, but I definitely discuss it in my course on the lesson on homesteading. Now, as for how do you get to this homogeneous culture, well, what's more fundamental than culture? It's actually the philosophy of the day. The philosophy of the day is what gives you a certain culture, right? So, and that's why I'm very strong on hampering on Leonard Peikoff's philosophical theory of history, because I do believe that it's very important to change the philosophy, and that changes everything else afterwards.
For sure.
I would agree. I would.
Oh yeah,
I would agree with that
Jacob, come back real
100%.
quick.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I mean, that's why what I do with LCI is trying to promote a certain legal theory to my core audience, which is Christians, right? So I do think that yeah, the philosophical view of history has uh, a lot of merit to it, and I'm certainly the law, insofar as it is a sort of a objective part of the ethics that tell us how we resolve or avoid conflicts or who's in the wrong in a certain conflict. I think that's all well and good. I just think that, we even hit a point in our conversation where there just was like, well, listen, there is a point to where the theorist or the jurist is going to go, well, there are these general principles, but some of these examples we could think of are going to be like, there's not going to be a way for the jurist to know whether aggression has occurred and who did it. A judge would have to use the general principles and dictate that. And I think that if we're being honest, we can imagine scenarios that are dubious in terms of like, is there going to be a clear case of it uh, where a judge, we would trust the judge is going to be able to make a sound ruling. Um, and that's I think when you hit those fuzzy points, it's not contradicting the theory or saying there's an exception and it's wrong. It's I would phrase it differently than what Dave did. I just think that it's insofar as even you said, it's a thin philosophy. Um, Not that it's less important in terms of I think it's incredibly important. I think in a sense that you can have uh, if you don't like what I tell Christians, because sometimes Christians will ask me, well, Jacob, if you're a Christian, then why do we need this libertarianism stuff anyway, right? And I'm like, well, that's like saying like, if I believe the Bible is the source of truth, like why do we need engineers, right? Like just because I think the biblical worldview gives us like a theory to like, that the world was created by God, and therefore I think all truth can be kind of derived from that fact that the universe was created with a certain natural order that we can discover. It's like, well, then we need engineers to like be like, hey, I've discovered how like this is kind of how history and the scientific revolution and industrialization happens. Like people discovered the universal principles of the natural order, and I'm like, and it stands to reason that there's people who are going to do that when it comes to ethics and to law and legal disputes and things like that as well. They're going to specialize in uh, you know expanding upon and applying those universal principles. So we need that 100%. But I think I think we need to imagine the best possible society, and also I think to give people not all cultures are going to even be at that point where they care about the legal theory. So there's an importance to both. I don't think you can. I think if you focus on culture to the expense of the legal theory, or if you focus on legal theory to the expense of culture, those are both sort of imbalanced. So I'll end there.
I think we need to, yeah, I think we need to get to some more of these hands. So I want to go to Finn because he has been waiting for a long time. So Finn, look, really appreciate you being super patient with us, man. Please jump in when you're ready.
So I have a question related to the forestalling thing. So, I think isn't the principle that since like if someone wants to homestead inside the donut, the person who has like the donut ring has to create like an unhomesteadable path towards the inside of the ring. Is that correct? Just before I ask the further question.
So my view on this is that the second you seal up that donut, you have in fact homesteaded the donut hole. Now, if there's already people in there or whatever, then yeah, you do need some sort of an easement over that donut.
Would that easement be like an unhomesteadable thing, or would that require like giving the part of the property over to the person inside the ring?
You could do it a number of ways. So, for instance, the way easements are currently dealt with is it's, okay, well, I have the right to walk over this. You're not allowed to exclude me in such a manner that I'm not able to cross over the donut. Now, that might be like a path or, a whole number of things. But the main point is the person who controls the donut, the person who owns the donut, they have to maintain whatever like tunnel or whatever is to get past the donut. They have to maintain that easement.
Yeah, and I think my broader question is, I guess, related to more, I guess, practical example with something like if we had ANCAPism tomorrow and everyone like went out and homesteaded, like especially in a city, and someone was like outside of the city, but they had a property like inside, but nobody wanted to like let them through their property or whatever. Would each person have to have that like easement in place? And if so, since there's like a various amount of people, each with different properties, which path is there like a principle saying like which path like should be made, or would it just have to be like up to the person who owns the thing that they're trying to get to inside?
So it would be the person who seals up the donut, in a manner of speaking, which, on the scale of a city, that I can't answer who it would be who sealed it up, but whoever sealed it up, they've got to maintain some sort of an easement.
Also, would it be like the person who is like the innermost ring, or like around them?
It depends entirely on like the specific order of homesteading. I couldn't answer that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No, that's all good, and appreciate you for being super patient, man. I'm going to go to, so I think the order will be go to Naya first, and then Christian, and then we'll get to the rest of the hands. So Naya, go ahead.
Right. On the question of coalitioning with the Groypers or the America First people, the problem isn't coalition itself. It's that the way this is being done, and you can see this, you can listen to every podcast like Dave Smith or Tom Woods, whenever they're with these younger, more nationalist guys, they're always approaching it from a position of weakness. They're giving away tons of ground, and they're not getting anything in return. And so, like, the rationale behind this is, oh, the enemy here is like the neoliberal warhawk types, the boomers. But these guys aren't going to be around much longer. They're on the way out. In 10 to 15 years, the status quo in America is going to resemble the nationalist position much more strongly. And they're going to throw all the libertarians out. They're going to shoot you in the back of the head once they're in power. So that's the problem here. And that's why it's not enough to not be a pragmatist. We have to be actively anti-pragmatist.
Yeah, definitely. and you see this, like, I think I went over this in the video where the sort of Mises Caucus types, the pragmatists, the neo-prags, they're in this position of weakness. They're just begging for scraps, as you say, from the paleocons, who are already in a position below the neocons, and the neocons just get whatever the hell they want. So it's like libertarianism is now being made into like a third tier ideology. Now, I do think that is probably changing. The nationalists seem to be definitely winning out a lot more. But yeah, the point is like, okay, but how are libertarians actually, how are they getting their special job on the cabinet? How are they getting their, goodies from RFK? Well, as it turns out, they're not, right? As always happens, people like Trump are fully willing to say like, yeah, don't worry, libertarians, I love the libertarians, and you're all gonna, and I'm gonna do great things for the libertarians. And as it turns out, he doesn't actually give a shit about following through on any of his promises. Thankfully, he did free Ross. There's debate about who exactly is responsible for that. But where is the win when we are kind of kowtowing to a Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson, and basically, as is now being advocated, give them the entire apparatus of the Libertarian Party? What do we get in return for that? And it kind of reveals that, well, maybe a lot of these neoprags, maybe they just like the idea of America first. Maybe that's what they're really after here. And so what they get out of that is, well, now libertarianism is dead, and America first gets to win, and we get national socialism in the US. It's like, okay, if all of their actions are kind of pointing and pushing us in that direction, after a certain point, you got to wonder, well, maybe that's just what they really want. Maybe they aren't actually libertarians who are trying to get us libertarianism by pushing a completely counter ideology.
Yeah, and
And if you're
Oh, sorry, go
confident
ahead, Mark.
in your belief, if you're 100% certain that you're right, you shouldn't be tempted by these coalitions of weakness. You shouldn't be willing to give anything away, because you would know that in the long run, you have the truth on your side, and the ground will come to you the longer you follow the Isaiah's job strategy.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Quickly on that as well. Like you see, these, obviously Dave and whatnot has engaged with Nick Fuentes, and like they've been on each other's shows or whatever. They even did like an in person like podcast with Fuentes, which I've can't remember the last time I saw Dave do like an in person part of the problem with someone, but and it was like, and then now the other day, Fuentes is like counter signaling libertarianism and saying it's like a silly ideology and impossible and it's never going to be achieved. It's like, well, okay, what kind of ground did we attain here? Like by being kind and platforming Fuentes when no one else would, and being that's one of the things that Dave has pointed out to Fuentes, because obviously Nick will spurg out at him for being Jewish or whatever. And Dave will be like, well, hang on, I was one of the guys platforming you years ago when you were kicked off YouTube and you were, you had been totally rejected by the entirety of the mainstream to the point where you were basically being ostracized completely. And I brought you on the podcast. It's like, well, or I debated you or whatever. And it's like, well, how much ground has that gained us if Fuentes is coming out now and being like, yeah, I completely reject libertarianism? He's not even willing to say, oh, like the libertarians, they have some interesting ideas, like they're wrong about this and that, but they have some interesting ideas. He's like, no, he's just going to reject the philosophy out of hand, which, I mean, I guess he should, right? Because he's a national socialist. But like, come on, like what kind of ground have we gained if that's the position that this guy's taking? Before I go to the next hand, I do just want to tell people, so we have a limit of 10 speakers on the stage. That's just the limit that X sets for whatever reason. So, and there's other people requesting. So I'm going to have to drop someone down in order to bring someone else up. So if you do get dropped down, it's not a personal vendetta or anything. We just need to make space. So you could still, like, again, if you want to be still part of it, make sure to request again, and I'll try and bring you back up when there's space. But like, if we do have 10 speakers that have kind of, and some of them have spoken, and we still have people requesting, I'm going to have to just kind of rotate through people in order to make it work. Finn, did you want to jump in real quick? I see you come off mic.
No, I was just going to say you can drop me if you want.
Oh, okay, for sure. Well, yeah, I'll drop you down real quick. If you do want to stick around, then make sure to request or whatever, and I'll bring you back up when I can.
Yeah, I'll be around.
Yeah, sweet.
Nicola
cool.
in chat just call you out. He said Monhop personally hates the next person dropped. So unfortunately for you, Finn,
Yeah,
it's not looking good.
A fellow Australian, how could you do that?
I know. I did notice the accent as well. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to drop a fellow Aussie from the chat. That's so unpatriotic of me. So anyway, while I'm doing that, Christian, I think we're gonna have the objectivist versus Kantian battle now. So Christian, welcome to the stage. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me up. It's actually going to be completely the opposite of that. I don't have any interest in fighting with Zulu here, even though I am a proud Kantian who believes the objectivist epistemology to be self-undermining. None of that matters right now. What I think, and I'll wrap this all up in a question in just a second, but what I think is really important here is exactly what Zulu said when he was talking about should we kill all of the Kantians to make for a perfect libertarianism. It's that no, what this entire event happening and occurring inside of libertarianism is demonstrating is that there have been an increasing number of people who call themselves libertarians who have foregone the non-aggression principle for all intents and purposes. And what I find so so impassioning about a movement like this is that it feels like for the first time in a long time, the wider libertarian community has their pulse on what I think is exactly the root issue at the heart of so many of the disagreements that have been occurring over the last couple of years that have led to the endless, notorious libertarian infighting. And that is, do you believe in the non-aggression principle, or do you take the non-aggression principle to be a useful heuristic? I don't think there's a meaningful middle ground between these two positions. And insofar as that is the case, this entire movement that is occurring here, this vanguard, this coalition that's been built, has a once in an ideological lifetime opportunity to reset like Zulu has said in his video, to reset the mark of what it is to be a libertarian back to where it ought to be, which is, do you adhere to the non-aggression principle? And now to say this is going to entail a kind of a cost. You know, Monhop, you were talking about the debates with Kinsella that had occurred recently. You know, I was in that thread as well. I had some stuff to say to Kinsella about his like meta-normative proposal and where that kind of gets awry. But like this is a kind of cost that if we take this seriously, and I really think we should, this means that we have to start saying, hey, people like Stefan Kinsella who want to carve out all of these exceptions where the non-aggression principle can be violated for extra moral concerns. You've got a problem and you need to fix it. And in doing so, I think this cost is also another opportunity where libertarianism has a kind of a problem as a movement that this can help us to correct, which is that there are a lot of really old people who said a lot of really good things and did a lot of really interesting, groundbreaking work, who it's time to take our first steps on moving beyond. And this includes incorporating newer thinkers, newer voices, newer philosophers into the conversation that are NAP first, that are deeply committed to the libertarian principles and can help us charge a new path forward. And if we can execute on this properly, I think there's an extremely high chance that we forge an extremely promising future for generations of libertarians to come. Not to say we won't have our pitfalls, not to say that we won't continue to have our disagreements, but that this is a legitimate opportunity for us to step beyond just fighting at these, 4 levels up from the actual disagreement squabbles that occupy so much of our time, and really get to the root of what is causing this. And it's not going to be nice. It's not going to be easy. It's not always going to be fun, but I think it's important. And I just really want to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to what it is that needs to be done.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And, this is why, actually I heard about this after the fact when I was listening to Tetsi, which is Ace Arcus and Dino's show, where apparently there was a ceasefire called in the Kantian libertarian group chats. I guess it's like, okay, yeah, I know that he said a lot of objective stuff in that video, but that's the point to focus on. I agree with this. I independently came to the same principle. Is that the point to focus on is like, okay, well, are you an NEP absolutist? Which is just another word for libertarian, in my view, as libertarianism upholds the NEP. So if you're not a libertarian absolutist, well, guess what? You're not. If you're not an NEP absolutist, you're just not a libertarian. And I very much agree that is where that should be the wedge issue. Because this is fundamentally, libertarianism is a coalition. By its nature as a thin philosophy floating way up there in the legal theory, it's going to have to be a coalition between multiple incompatible philosophies. And I completely agree that there's sort of, almost a sense of hero worship among a lot of the liberty movement or at least there has been, where it's like, okay, well, this great of libertarianism, he said this. Okay, well, Rothbard said this, and Hoppe said this, and so on and so forth. And it's like, well, I mean, what the hell are we, like just some sort of cult? Like, it's who cares that the fucking, oh, well, my church father agrees with me. Well, this church father agrees with me. It's like, come on, no shade to obviously the Christians listening in, but that's not how libertarianism should operate. It's not about which of your favorite libertarian authors said half a century ago what you're saying now. It's about, okay, well, is the argument true? And and now we are definitely seeing a sort of a Gen Z sort of resurgence, a reconquista of the libertarian movement, where a lot of the young people, and this is also happening in the objectivist movement, by the way, where a lot of the young people, they just aren't satisfied with having the philosophy be static and still and never developing. And I'm very much not satisfied by that, and that's why I'm trying to push very strongly against this sort of old guard, which have kind of been fattened by their sort of tranquility and not having to, really deal with these problems. And I think their time's up. It's the old meme with the rabbit, and he's holding the pocket watch. Their time has come. The reckoning is here, and now the only option is, how are you going to deal with it?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I'm gonna bring up something that Hopper said that I unfortunately really, really disagree with. I think he was quoted saying, maybe at PFS or somewhere, that, okay, the time for establishing the theory is over. It's now time to go out and, like, act or whatever, or, work to change the world. And so I couldn't disagree more. Okay, there was still a lot of finer points that hadn't been articulated or hashed out when Hopper was writing. And it's the same now. It's like, look, when I say this all the time, Rothbard is one of the greatest philosophers or greatest scholars to ever live, and I stand by that to this day. But the fact of the matter is, and part of being one of the greatest philosophers, was that he was building up the philosophy of libertarianism basically from the ground up and starting a brand new movement. And with that is going to come some, inconsistencies or areas where he wasn't fully developed, because how can you fully develop an entirely new philosophy in one lifetime? You can't. As one person in one lifetime, you just can't. It's not going to happen. You're going to miss things. You're going to make incorrect assumptions. You're going to come to false conclusions, and you're going to articulate things incorrectly, and that's okay. That's completely fine. He got 98% of the way there as far as what the philosophy or what the legal theory entails, and he got some things wrong. That's fine. But to your point, Zulu, the kind of the hero worship, and not just that, but even you see this in the objectivist thing that we're trying to do, where it's like, well, Rand and Rothbard really hated each other, so therefore, like, objectivists should hate anarcho-capitalists. And it's like, well, who cares about what two dead people had this feud over that wasn't even necessarily to do with the philosophy itself? It was to do with, like, Rothbard didn't like the Rand. He felt like objectivism was a cult around Ayn Rand, which he was probably valid in some respects about that. And Rand didn't like the Rothbard. Among other things, I think he didn't like the Rothbard. She didn't like the Rothbard. Didn't cite her in some of his papers, which I think is a valid criticism of Rothbard. So, but it's like that has nothing to do with their respective philosophies or whether they can be integrated or not. So let's, like, stop giving a shit about who Rothbard personally liked or disliked, or what personal coalitions Rothbard decided to make. Again, he built from the ground up most of the greatest philosophy that's ever existed. Zula, can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say,
okay.
Just on that point that he didn't cite Rand enough. Well, that just already points to the fact that these these philosophies are very easy to integrate, because Rothbard he used a lot of objectivism in his work, and as it turns out, yeah, that means there's something there,
Yeah, and I think just to wrap a bow on it, like, it really frustrates me when I see people, and this is going to be another crack at Dave, but it is what it is. Labor mixing and retroactive slavery. It's like, okay, we moved past the Lockean ideas in like, you know, the early 21st century at the latest. Like, I don't know exactly when Kinsella's paper or when Kinsella did that. I think he did a lecture, and then it's been also transcribed into a paper where he basically talks about, you know, specifically some concerns around like the imprecision of language that libertarians use. Okay, that was an argument that's been made for a long time now. So, like, can we at least get to the point where the people that are trying to bring the movement forward, actually understand the positions that are currently being taken within the liberty movement, even if they may disagree with like our specific stance on something. It's like, well, at least understand it, and at least understand the language that's being used, rather than using, you know, what John Locke said in the, you know, 18th century or whenever he said it. Unless Zula has anything on that, I'm going to try and get through some more of these hands. So we'll go to Dejak next, or Dejak, and then I want to hit up Cosmo.
Yo, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. I've just got a suggestion for like the Prague arguments that always get brought up, like the Euron Brooks style shit, where they sort of say, but how would the police work and how would the courts work and all that sort of nonsense. There's just like a bit of an argument contrario for that, of like all knowledge is either like unknowable and unimportant, or knowable and unimportant, or knowable and important. And just like having to bring up, sorry, whether or not I'm just a bit out of breath, sorry, I'm just at work. Whether or not, so if they're saying like basically, like on Fabian's stream the other day, there was some suggestion that we don't talk enough about what could be solutions to these problems that the Prags bring up. And I just want your thoughts on whether or not using that argument de contrario, because it's sort of important but not knowable, is that even something you would consider using against these Prags? Is it a good argument? I'm not sure.
For the e contrario there, I'd have to sit down with it, because they're, you know, more complicated arguments by their nature, and like, you know, really draw out, is this a valid e contrario and so on and so forth, before I'd want to use it in debates. But I will say, you know, on whether we need to focus more on, you know, coming up with solutions for these problems that the Prags come up with. I think the important thing to do now is just to exacerbate this issue we've got with the Prags, really try and drive them as far away from the movement as possible. And then we can start, you know, getting back into the work of, okay, well then how would we solve this in a libertarian world, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, I'm not going to disparage anybody who does that. A great majority of my videos, I would say, are going over, you know, how would the courts work? How would this work? How would that work? But I think the important point right now is just to keep hammering, no, libertarians believe in the NEP. Libertarians believe in the NEP. We are a principled stance. Pragmatism is the opposite of principles. And just really keep hammering that in until everybody understands what libertarianism even is. We can't have, you know, we can't be focused on, well, what does libertarianism have to say about this thing, until it's very, very clear to everybody involved what libertarianism even is in the first place. And then we can start focusing on other stuff.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's go through to more of these hands. So I want to hit up Cosmo, and then this name that I do not know how to pronounce or even begin pronouncing, but it's the person with like the lady in marble with an ANCAP logo behind her. But we'll go to Cosmo first, and then we'll hit up that individual. So Cosmo, go ahead, man.
Well, I just wanted to mention how important I think it is to not just keep restating that we believe in the NAP, but to argue for it, right? To argue for the truth of the NAP. Because, for example, I was a fan of Mentis Wave, and he's an anarcho-capitalist. He likes to mention Hoppe in his videos, but he never sold me on anarcho-capitalism because he never made the argument. He never said, okay, here's the NAP, this is how it's true, you know, argumentation, ethics. He never did that. But I go and I watch a video by you, Liquid Zulu, and it's like in 20 minutes, wow, I've been converted. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. The NAP is actually true. You know, you can prove it. And I think it's really important that we not only show people, oh, libertarians believe in the NAP, libertarians know the NAP. We know it, and we'll argue for it.
Yeah, definitely. And this kind of ties in with the philosophical theory of history as well. Because what does the philosophical theory of history say? It says that the fundamental driver of society is the philosophy of the day. How do you change the philosophy of the day? Well, you got to make philosophical arguments. That's just how you do it. Because you got to convert the philosophers. And you don't do that by because it's not a philosophical argument. How would the courts be run with a free market system? That's just not, that's an application of the philosophy for sure. But that's more in the realm of economics than it is ethics. And so we really need to be hammering in on the ethical points and really having a strong understanding of philosophy, and or else it just isn't possible to actually push this thing properly. I will note that G is requesting to speak before Jacob, so I suppose after Mr. Greek name, if you, because G is saying that he wants to respond to what Jacob had to say.
I will say, Zulu, you are dropping out a little bit. I got the last bit of your thing about how G wants to go, so I'll hit up this other person and then go to G and then Jacob. But Zulu, fix your mic, brother. I don't know exactly what's going on, but so we'll hit up. As I said, this individual. I'm sorry, I can't call you by your name, but I do not know how to pronounce it. But please go ahead.
Yes, hello. So, firstly, I would like to say that my mic is also faulty. So if it cuts out at any point, just move over me because it will not be fixed. So, what I wanted to. Firstly, I would like to say that my mic is also faulty. So if it cuts out at any point, just move over me because it will not be fixed. So, what I wanted to say mostly.
Try and leave and rejoin, I reckon.
Philosophy, or that we live in anarcho-capitalism in our heads, is quite misguided, because we're essentially saying that no, we live in anarcho-capitalism right now. This is the nature of reality, and there is no validity to the current system.
Okay, there we go. But I cannot hear him. The fuck? Jesus Christ. I need to fucking fix this goddamn system, bro. Ay.
In fighting range of the bigger leagues, but that's it.
No, I appreciate it, man. I'm just trying to get Zulu back up on the stage. Don't know exactly what's going on because it keeps declining my co-host invite, which is annoying.
I don't.
We'll try and figure it out. In the meantime, I want to go to G and then we'll hit up Jacob. So G, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
System like anarcho-capitalism is some societal system on the same level as these other societal systems. Like, it's answering the question of how should we run society, and Zulu has really tried to stress this point that that's an invalid question, right? And and I was trying to say that to Jacob for his question, because he asked a question there, like, would you rather have the libertarian society or this other society or whatever with these centrally planned like ways of doing things? It's a legal theory, right? And nothing is fuzzy once we get down like the basics of it. And sorry, I drink some water. Hold up, my mouth is dry. Yeah, so there aren't these fuzzy cases, right? When you understand the legal theory, right? When we start with the legal theory, and in any conflict over scarce means, there's always a first comer and a late comer. That's the most basic thing you have to understand in the legal theory. And if you don't get that, then you just legal theory, right? So that's what a judge is looking at, and it's on the onus of the first to make it known, like make it available that they're the owner, right? And all of this, right? This knowledge, like this is the sufficient knowledge to bring something to arbitration in the first place, right? This is just like in order to even arbitrate over a conflict, right? We're talking about somebody is uh, claim they own and they have specific evidence. It's a very like specific fact to evidentiate, right? Like we have this specific thing, right? It's not fuzzy at all. Is my point.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think, like as Zulu was pointing out earlier, there are some like, obviously when you're comparing, okay, shooting an entire like a stadium-sized light
Oh, and
into.
I had another point. I forgot, but I had another point that I can say.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead real quick, and then we'll hit up Jacob.
Right. He's also saying that uh, we're trying to get this ideal world. Like I think he's saying libertarianism, but that's not what libertarianism is saying at all. It's I mean, conflicts are always possible. That's what libertarianism is. That conflicts are always possible, and this is a problem of ethics to deal with, right? So we have to have some way of these conflicts, right? We're not trying to eliminate conflicts, right? We're not trying to set up a societal system to eliminate conflicts where everybody's just like in utopia, right? It's not utopianism.
Right. I tend to agree with that point. I think that the libertarian legal theory is in fact like an acknowledgement of the fact that nothing is ever going to be perfect and that there are going to be conflicts that occur between people. So like if conflicts could never occur, or we entered a state where no one was ever going to come into conflict with one another, then you wouldn't need the theory. It's because of the
Right.
fact that conflicts can occur and conflicts will always be able to occur as far as we know, that you need the legal theory at all. And this is one of the criticisms I have of people who say something along the lines of, oh, well, the fact that I can violate your rights proves that like your rights never existed. That's something that I see Andrew Wilson argue a lot. He has this like, calls it like force doctrine or something, where he's basically like, okay, rights are just whatever you can assert. Like if you can, it's just basically the government grants you rights and it's only to the extent that you can enforce them that they exist. And my point would always be like, well, the entire purpose of establishing a theory of rights is to understand when they've been violated. If you could never violate the rights to begin with, then you wouldn't need a theory of rights. So that's basically my take on it. I do want to hit up Jacob, and then we'll go to, unless Zula, you want to jump in at all, and then we'll go again to Cosmo.
I will just say that how about we have Cosmo be the last time, because he did sneak in there, because I will have to go to bed shortly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sounds good. All right, so Jacob, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe I forget who spoke last. I think maybe I wasn't clear. Maybe you just missed some of what I said, because I think you unintentionally. I'm not ascribing bad faith, but I think you kind of misrepresented some of the things I said. My point wasn't that.
I was trying to say it in a way that people who are familiar with like.
Real quick, we'll let Jacob finish first, and then G, I promise you can come back in and respond. But we'll just let Jacob get the thought out first.
Oh, what?
Jacob, please go ahead.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I am often trying to tell people that libertarianism is not utopian, and that it's not going to prevent every problem in the world. And even insofar as we think we have the correct legal theory, which helps us to rightly rule on conflicts and determine who the aggressor is, that I think that there are some conflicts and just some goods that people might say, like, okay, even in a libertarian society, there can be other things that we can use to evaluate if that society is good or bad. And so culture is important in general. And I think culture is also important to liberty. That was the point. I think I but just in general, I wanted to make another point, which I think we'll get to some of what you were saying about other things I said, which is that on one hand, I think that there's valid points to be made about the development of theory and to not do hero worship. I think that's incredibly valid. I do also think that to this idea of like living in cap.
Oh,
Did we lose Jacob? Or was
yeah,
that just
I
me?
think so.
he cut out for me as well.
Twitter space moment. This is, I swear to God, Elon needs to fix it, because genuinely the only reason I want to do spaces is because Jacob, we've lost you. If you want to drop down and then maybe come back up, I can get you back on the mic. But people have been asking me why I want to do Twitter Spaces rather than like just like a Discord or even just like a live stream with Zulu or something. And it's because of two reasons. I want it to make it easier for the audience to engage, and B, because I like the discoverability of Twitter Spaces, because basically once you're on a space, if you are in a space, I think as a speaker or even just as a listener, it sends out like a beacon to every single person who's following you that you're on spaces. So that's why I want to keep doing it. I want to keep, but the amount of technical difficulties that come with it is making it far more difficult than I would like to keep this going. I feel like we've lost Jacob still, so I'm actually going to remove him from speakers, and if he comes back up, we'll try again. But I want to hit up Cosmo, and then before we go, I do want to try and get through the couple of questions that we've had sitting in the Jumbotron for a bit, if that's all right, Zulu, and then we can kind of
Yeah, for sure.
get towards wrapping things up. So, Cosmo, please go ahead.
So also, I just wanted to mention about like subjectivists and legal positivists, how they're going to be a big issue you have to deal with, and it's important to argue against them. I mean, the other day I had a funny argument where I was trying to show argumentation ethics to someone. They were saying, "Well, I could just shoot you and that would win the argument." And I'm like, "No, that's not how that works." And I just think it's important to sort of show just how cruel that type of view is, the legal positivism, the subjectivism that is so prevalent nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and that's why throughout the entire, course of my, online career, if you want to describe it that way, I have been trying to hammer very hard on like, okay, well, these are kind of foregone conclusions, but like, they aren't actually true just because most people accept legal positivism. Like, people who accept legal positivism almost universally commit the fallacy of the frozen abstraction. They just think that law is legal positivism. That's the only possible legal theory there is. And it's like, I think it's important to kind of point at that and go, well, actually, no. You've got a stuck premise here. I want you to actively know that you even are a legal positivist and actually argue for legal positivism, because I think legal positivism does actually have very strange conclusions that it leads to. It's a very strange thing, like, because if I were to just tell you, you're walking down the road and there's a fork in the road, you can go either left or right. On the left, there's a mother and her child. On the right, there's a criminal. Which road do you pick? Nobody's fucking going, yeah, I'd go down the road with the criminal, because I'm a legal positivist and that doesn't give me any, or nobody's approaching that and going like, well, I don't have enough information to answer this, because just saying that he's a criminal doesn't actually tell me anything about his character. It's like, as it turns out, people, they do associate crime with being in some way immoral, in some way untoward. Like, people treat law as a subset of ethics. Like, if you came home for the holidays and you tried to explain to your parents that you actually have a criminal record, they would be like, Jesus Christ, I thought we raised you right. But, you know, if they're illegal positivists, really they should be saying, okay, well, you know, did you also get a haircut? Why are you telling us this? This gives us no information about you. It's like, okay, but people actually understand if you're walking down the road and you know that there's a criminal down the road, you're gonna cross the other side. You know, that actually does give you some amount of information. People obviously aren't consistent with their natural law theorizing, but they should at least recognize that there is a debate going on there. But yeah, it does look like Jacob is perhaps back now, unless Monhop has something to say.
Yeah, no, I'll let Jacob jump in again if
All right,
you're
can
back.
you hear me now?
Yes, yep.
All right, sorry, I don't know what happened there, but what happened was I had a phone call come in, and then when I ignored it, it screwed everything up. But first of all, I'll make this
Spaces
quick.
does that.
Yeah,
It's really, really bad.
it's really annoying. First of all, I want to agree with what Zulu just said. Like, I mean, I think that, you know, as a Christian, I obviously agree with the natural law argument. This is like a classic, like you know, even C.S. Lewis made this argument in his book Mere Christianity for just like the like it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or an atheist or whatever. Like everyone has to like the debate isn't is there natural law. The debate is just what is the natural law and consistent application and understanding of it. So I think we're kind of, you know, on the same book there, probably even the same chapter. The point I was trying to land on before is just that I think, you know, obviously we need the radicals. The remnant strategy is important. But you know, Zulu brought up the American Revolution, and I think that's a kind of interesting case study in terms of both radicalism and sort of the other thing which I like to point to, which that there can be this sort of like gradualist process of where there is compromise and coalition of like co-belligerents who aren't necessarily all radicals, because it's, you know, I think we all know that not all the founding fathers were radicals, and you could even say that like that led to some of the fatal flaws, right, with the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists, right? But there's this point to like, this isn't so much like a rebuttal of what you guys are saying, but just I think an important nuance to understand that like we have to we have to, of course, gather the remnant. We have to preach the radical message, and yet at the same time, the way in which liberty advances in the world is not, we're not always going to see it happen as quickly as we want it to. And there can be advances and then regressions. And like I think America's in a perfect example of that, where they got some things right, made some advancements, and now we've seen some regressions. And now there's this battle over like, well, what does America need to do? Does it need to go back to its core principles? Does it need to adopt different principles? But just in terms of that initial what got them going, there was this sort of process before the actual revolution happened, where at first they were just saying, well, we don't need to become our own nation and self-govern like these radicals are saying. We can just compromise with the British government. We can just ask very nicely for our freedom. And then it took, you know, that failing over and over again over a course of many years and the tyranny worsening for then the radical message to finally, you know, be accepted by, and you know, at that point, the radical message, of course, wasn't anarcho-capitalism, but it was like, you know, we need to govern ourselves. We shouldn't be governed by, you know, we're not subjects of the crown and whatnot. So, I never want to say that the radicals should stop preaching the radical message, because like we always need that. Like slavery was abolished because abolitionists, you know, wouldn't give an inch in terms of the message. But then we also need to recognize that there will be people out there who are co-belligerent, who might even agree with the radical message, but there are some who are going to have that job of like, hey, like, you know, you're preaching the radical message, and I'm out there trying to get these people to, you know, who are in maybe positions of power or influence to move an inch in our direction, and maybe they'll compromise a bit, and then they'll see that'll fail. When compromise fails, we just have to make sure that we're there to remind them that the compromise failed because they compromised in the direct, you know, insofar as they compromised against liberty and not in favor of it.
Yeah, that's kind of my main point with respect to like the compromisitarians, I suppose you could call it, is that they are fundamentally attacking the remnant. They are attacking the radical vanguard when they're engaged in these compromises, and I think it's impossible to actually engage in such compromise on anti-principle on principle without attacking the principles. And if you're attacking the principles, then you're attacking the radicals, right? You have to go out there. I think if you are one of these pragmatist sorts, and you have to say, well, we're not like those crazy radicals. Those crazy radicals, they believe crazy, and you have to end up counter-signaling, or else you end up being one of the radicals, right? If you don't engage in this counter-signaling, I kind of expand on this viewpoint a little more heavily in the video, and that's why, for instance, Ron Paul, I would say, he's not engaged in this sort of compromisitarian strategy, because he wasn't out there, saying, oh, those crazy radicals, they're so crazy, they believe in open borders. But 10 times out of 10, if Dave Smith is on one of these big podcasts and somebody asks him about open borders, he immediately jumps at the opportunity to be saying how crazy we radical libertarians are. I think that's kind of the danger with that. I will just say, oops, a daisies. Oh, sorry, because it turned midnight, my wallpaper just changed. I thought something strange had happened. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on that.
My favorite part of any of these streams is finding out which new term Zulu is going to come up with Etarian on the end. So the new one is compromisitarian. We've had soundbiteitarian, and we've had celebritarian, obviously famously with the video. But I can't wait to find out what we'll have in a fortnight with the new Etarian label. So I want to get through the last couple of questions that I've had sitting in the Jumbotron for a little while. So this one from Poval or Poval or Poval or however you pronounce it. He asks, is there such a thing as scaring off the remnant? Is radical messaging the only way to reach the remnant? I think I know how you're going to answer this question, Zulu.
Yeah, I and this is sort of what I was getting into before there, is that yes, I do think there is such a thing as scaring off the remnant. Because I think if you're engaged in this sort of like salesmanship attitude towards philosophical proselytizing, you necessarily, because you're trying to compromise with the normies, you necessarily have to say, oh, but we're not like those crazy radicals. Those crazy radicals are so crazy and I hate them. And fuck the radicals. And yes, please, I'll lock up the boxcar for you, sir. And that is specifically either, if you're not a radical and you're in the movement, either you're just completely irrelevant chaff, which actually that still alienates the radicals. As I go over, it makes it harder for radicals to coordinate, or you're an active subverter. Because really, what is the movement? Well, the movement is the people who generate the motion. Who generates the motion? Only the radicals. Only the radicals are capable of generating the motion. They're not just the guiding light or the misguided autistic wing or anything of the sort of the movement. They are the movement. Anybody else is either entirely irrelevant or an active hindrance. And that's just how it logically cuts up. But yeah.
For sure. I'll get to this last question and then I'll hit up Cosmo and then that might wrap things up because I know you want to finish up Zulu. Understandably. So Ancap's Tony has asked, and this might be a difficult question or a long-winded question for you to answer at this time of the night for you, but he asks, how do we integrate Austrian understanding of value with that of objectivism? And if, let's say, crack cocaine addiction is something that I act to gain or keep, wouldn't it then be a value?
Sure. So this is something that Cameralized, who's a guy in my Discord, he's doing great work on trying to, because he's very knowledgeable in Austrian economics, and he's also an objectivist. So he's doing a lot of great work in kind of unifying Austrian econ and objectivism, trying to get the objectivist epistemology, reasserting that as the root, which is actually it lines up very nicely with what Rothbard was doing. Because Rothbard was, of course, an Aristotelian, and as I argue, Cameralized actually disagrees with me. I argue that he was indeed an objectivist. So the way you do this, let's just take it on, kind of a zoomed out level. Obviously, I can't go into immense detail here. on the zoomed out level, all objectivism says with respect to values is that a value is that which man acts to gain and or keep. Now it then goes on to say that there's a certain sense of proper versus improper values. They say the word objective. Is this an objective value? That is, does it actually line up with what has to be the standard for value? Now that's all in the realm of ethics. So as far as economics is concerned, well, the objectivist definition of value, it actually lines up very well with the Misesian sense of like subjective values, right? Because you could act to gain and or keep pretty much anything. So you can indeed have all these values, which you subjectively, quote unquote, choose. Obviously, the objectivists aren't going to like that word. And that they don't necessarily have to be proper or improper, right? On the level of the economist, all you care about is, well, what is he actually pursuing? And you get all the same marginalism dropping out of this, right? Because if you're going to pursue one thing, if you're pursuing one value, you necessarily have to be not pursuing other values at the same time. So you have to choose. There's opportunity cost, right? And this all very nicely lines up. You just have to do a few tweaks to the language and some work on epistemology. And you also get dualism, right? That's another big tenet of Austrian economics, which makes it superior to every other field of economics, is what? They recognize that there's a dualism here, that you can't use the same methods used to study particles in physics as you use for studying human action. A lot of the times, Austrian economists just kind of take this as oh, this was kind of mysterious here. We'll just take it as a given. They don't really demonstrate why that would be the case. Well, objectivism actually has a very good answer for that, and it's because human action specifically is chosen action, because humans have free will. And so that's why it's different than studying rocks falling in a hill or anything, because objectivists agree with teleology. And teleology, of course, a specific sense of teleology specifically for man. And that's how you get this dualism, which is leading you to have to use different tools to study human action from the action of rocks.
For sure. Let me hit up Cosmo now. Cosmo, please go ahead.
Okay, so on that question about it's gone from the board with the question that you were just answering.
Oh, sorry. Let me pop it up again real quick. Give me 1 sec. Sorry, I probably removed it a bit preemptively. The ANCAP is Tony one. Here we go. Oh, I should be up there now. You should be able to see it.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing about objectivism is I do believe people have their own individual sort of value scales, right? Their internal preferences. And what objectivism tells you to do is you evaluate them rationally. So, well, it would, to use a reason. So it could be a value, yes. But what objectivism tells you to do is to evaluate it rationally. So if you come to the rational conclusion, like, oh yeah, I should have cocaine sometimes, but not all the time because that would be bad for me, then I suppose that's how it would work. It is kind of an odd question. Sorry if that answer is kind of weird.
No, that's all good. Zulu, we do have a couple more requests. Do you want to get to those or wrap things up?
Let's wrap things up, and we can, 2 weeks hence, a fortnight hence, those people can come back and I suppose request a little earlier.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's it for episode 1. Appreciate everyone for coming on. As Zulu said, we'll have another one in a fortnight, and I'm going to keep using fortnight because screw Americans, right? But yeah, so once every fortnight, we will only have one more before Christmas. We'll have to take that week off. But no, appreciate everyone for coming up. Sorry to those we couldn't get to. But we'll catch you all next time. Cheers.
Yeah,
Zyle Zulu and Mile Monhop.
hell yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much to everybody who came. It's been a blast. We're gonna keep these going forever. These are never gonna end. 5,000 years. 5,000 years Zulu Reich is upon us.
Yeah. The Zith Reich or whatever we're up to. Sounds good. All right. Cheers, guys. See ya.
Yep. Alrighty. So yes, and thank you everybody who is tuning into the stream, especially to those who donated. So that would be DTD, Bald Bandit 3028, Huge Hat Harold, Kixulat, Null Paradigm, Face Value OG, and Heterodox Agnostic 8070. So thank you very much to especially those guys. Cosmo, I'll get to your email in a bit, and also I even had a shop sale in the middle of this. I don't think necessarily know if it was related or not. But yeah, thank you all, and I suppose I'll see you guys the next time. I'm gonna be streaming again tomorrow. I'm going on Fabian's stream, I believe, at least. I haven't heard back from that. I'll check up on that. And plenty of streams actually going on. Let me just see. Yeah, I've got Acorn on Wednesday, and then on Thursday/Friday, it's actually, because it's at 1 a.m., it's on a Friday for me, but it's on a Thursday night for Americans. I'm going to be having the Dave Smith debate finally. So yeah, that's sure to be good. So I'll